Good evening. This is Tuesday, September 11th, Board of Education meeting. The board has been in closed session since 6 p.m. All board members are present for the purposes of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, litigation, when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. The purpose or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired. And last, the setting of a price or sale or lease of property owned by the public body. This time we will say the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, the board will receive public comments for up to 3 minutes concerning items on this agenda, as well as communication, petitions, reports from citizens, or representatives of other public agencies. As a reminder, there's a timer and a small beep will go off when the 3 minutes have gone. First on the list is Matthew Seta. Thank you.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. My name is Captain Seta. I'm the Executive Officer of Marine Corps Recruiting Station Chicago, recruiting department for the Chicago and Chicagoland area. Every year, less than 1% of our high school graduates enlist in the Marine Corps. These young men and women come from different walks of life and are vigorously tested and trained on both of our coasts across our country, ultimately being asked to sign a blank check to our nation. What you see in the United States is not an all-volunteer force. It is a recruited force. I'd like to address the items in front of you that I handed out to both the President and Vice President. Inside, ladies, you're going to find ESE Act 1965, Section 8528, which was amended by ESSA, Department of Education letter, the school year 17-18 list attainment provided to our recruiters, and then 2015 to 2018 school contracting for York High School. On the right side, you're going to find email traffic generated by our commanding officer at Recruiting Station Chicago, followed by the current school year 18-19 list that was attained. 28% of that senior class was included in that list. To be completely transparent, District 205 is not alone when it comes to compliance with providing access to military recruiters in accordance with the ESSA. When we started addressing this issue, we had about 50 school districts that we believed were violating, whether known to them or not, ESSA's provisions laid out in the folders in front of you. During our campaign, we've ascertained that most secondary educational entities did not realize they were violating policy. This is likely because the changes are recent and institutional changes to processes and procedures take time to go into effect. For clarity, my presence here is to address the receipt of lists containing student directory information. These lists are typically requested by military recruiters, institutions of higher education, and prospective employers. In the case of York High School, a bona fide list, as we call it, was not attained. Our goal is 75% for both the junior and senior classes is attained in one list. While list attainment is important, I also want to highlight the positive working relationship that we have with York High School. Each school year, our Marines distribute awards at school assemblies and ensure that top performers are recognized publicly. Our Marines have aided coaches in quality physical training and motivation to both boys and girls sports teams. District 205 has produced students who have gone on to take leadership roles throughout the globe and currently serve in our nation's armed forces. Your graduates were able to take advantage of this opportunity because their recruiter was given the tools to effectively contact them and prepare them for the next step. In closing, I want to thank you for your time and for listening to my comments regarding my attendance this evening.
Thank you. All right, any other comments? Okay. So we'll move on to reports and presentations. Dr. Henderson is going to do a recap of the August startup activities.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really happy to be here to talk about our start of the year, which of course led to a very successful start of the school year for our students. So the first thing, you'll be seeing this in all of our presentations this year. This is the visual that we use to reflect our district's vision. Again, our vision is that all students will graduate college, career, and life ready. We'll know that they are college, career, and life ready when they are able to demonstrate competency of the 6 C's that you see listed there. By district supports, school supports, classroom and student support, we'll be able to reach that. And one of the ways we do that is through the rigor and relevance framework. You have seen this slide before. It's our learning and teaching priorities for the school year. As we talk about the launch of the school year, we really were grounded in that first priority, which is helping to create a shared understanding and measurement of our district vision, strategies, and priorities. Unless everyone in the organization understands our vision, where we're going and how we're going to get there, we never will fully attain it. So our work really began on August 2nd. Well, let me back that up. The work really began in May, but as we came into the new school year, we followed that up with a second administrator retreat on August 2nd. And that retreat was all administrators in the district, our assistant principals, all of our principals, all of our district administrators working together. And really the focus that day was collaboration, reflection, and a shared ownership in the success of all of our students in the district. Some of the work that took place that day, we began with a norming activity. That's something that we ask our PLCs, our professional learning communities, to do every year. So we do that with our admin as well, looking at the types of behaviors that we can come to expect from each other. How are we going to communicate with each other? How are we going to communicate with others in the organization who aren't on the administrative team? How are we going to ensure that we are moving the vision of the district forward? And then how are we going to respond when these agreements get broken? Which is really the most critical piece, because we know in the busyness of a school year, things go wrong, things happen, so you have to address up front, how are we going to address those concerns? We also worked at refining our theory of action so that it would guide our planning for the year. We came to a conclusion on that visual in the first slide that you saw, so we could represent where we're going. And then we also reviewed and finalized the learning and teaching priorities. We then moved into the work that we did with our summer learning with our administrators. Last month, I talked about the blended learning opportunity we used with our administrators via Google Classroom, and then some in-person work in August. So our work was focused on the book Learning Transformed, which was part of the work we did with Eric Scheninger when he was here in the district. What you see on this slide are listed the keys to leadership in Learning Transformed. So this slide is an example of some of the work that our administrators did over the summer. So what would happen is, as the teacher of their learning, of their course, I would post reflective questions based on the book that they were reading. So this one, for example, was focused on the leadership key of making learning personalized for all. So I gave the leaders some reflective questions so that they could respond to them. And then I know this is really difficult to see, but this was one of the responses and how it looks in Google Classroom. So for this particular example, Gina Pogreeder, our principal at Churchville, gave her thoughtful response about how she and her administrative team have worked to personalize learning for the staff at Churchville. And then you see below it, Aaron DeLuga, Dave Beatty, Ariana, and Heidi Thomas are all responding. So in essence, carrying on a virtual conversation based on Gina's posting. And in fact, Heidi, who's down at the very bottom, our principal at Field, has said this was a goal for her. So now knowing what Gina has done, Heidi's going to reach out to Gina to get some guidance and support as she launches that work at Field. So it was a great way to build upon the success that different administrators have had in the district. So from there, we took it to August 2nd, which was from their reflections over the summer to action. So this is an example of one of our principals' action plan for the year. So they were asked to identify 2 or 3 of the leadership keys in Learning Transformed and create an action plan for themselves for the year. So this particular principal is focusing on 2 of the keys. The first, that leadership and school culture lay the foundation. If you look over to the 3rd column, she identifies 4 specific steps she'll be taking this year. And then in the 4th column, she's identified the evidence she will use to measure whether or not she's been successful. And then the second target she has is for the learning experience to be redesigned and made personal. And again, in the 3rd column, she's identified her action steps. And in the 4th column, the evidence that she will use to measure whether or not she's been successful. So leaders take this, they also roll these into their professional goals for the year. They serve as check-in and discussion points between the leadership team, between each of our administrators, evaluators, and themselves. So it's a great way to really bring our goals to life. From August 2nd, which was a Thursday, we rolled right into the week of August 6th, which was the week of our new Educator Academy. We shortened it a little bit this year to 4 days. It's a lot of information for our new educators to take in. 5 days can be very overwhelming. So as I go through the plan for the year, I think you'll see how we're able to keep that learning going for them all year long. So some of the highlights, we always get a very great response from our new educators about the fact that Dr. Moyer takes time to come in and not just give a short welcome, but to really give them an opening keynote address. He really laid the groundwork for some of the work that took place the rest of the week by introducing them to the rigor and relevance framework, as well as what we stand for in District 205. Our first day also includes a luncheon with the Chamber of Commerce. That too is always very well received. Our new educators spent 1.5 days with our instructional coaches. And the work of the coaches was to lay that foundation of really important district priorities: professional learning communities, rigor and relevance, student engagement, and how to use technology as an accelerator for instruction. 2 half days are spent in each of the educators' home school with principals, mentors, department chairs, depending on the level. And then this year, we've shifted the way we do mentoring and induction. And this year, we have monthly meetings with our new educators that will be facilitated by our building principals and some of our assistant principals on relevant topics. Things from communication with families, standards-based reporting, learning targets, just a variety of topics that if we tried to cram it all into that new Educator Academy, nothing would have stuck with them because it's just too overwhelming. After New Educator Academy, we immediately rolled into our Institute Days. So August 13th was our first Institute Day. The first day of our 2 days is really a district focus, district outcomes. The goal was to introduce all of our staff to the district vision and our learning and teaching priorities. In grades K through 5, because we are launching standards-based reporting, we spent a lot of time in the morning, actually all of the time in the morning on that work. Our elementary schools this year have buddied up to do some of the work of standards-based reporting. We discovered last year in the pilot with Hawthorne and Field, the teachers found it really beneficial when they didn't work with just their own school-based grade level team, but that they had the opportunity to collaborate with another school and get just a little bit broader perspective. At the middle school, we introduced them to standards-based reporting as we look to make that shift in 6th grade beginning next year. And they also participated in department-based work with curriculum updates and beginning PLC work. At the high school, their focus was PLC and department-based work. And at early childhood, they were focused on assessment and student portfolios. In the afternoon, the entire district came together at York for a keynote speaker. This is the second year we've brought in a keynote speaker. I apologize that these are a little dark. These are actually staff members' photos that they took throughout the presentation in the auditorium. So we had Eric Scheninger, one of the authors of Learning Transformed. So we have that nice continuity. The feedback from the teachers, he was incredibly inspiring and motivating. Some of the teachers found it comforting that it wasn't new information, that it was information, in fact, that we have been continuing to work on. So they felt like it wasn't something new thrown at them. Throughout the year, Eric Scheninger will be back in the district working with York High School. That photo on the bottom left is a picture of Eric working with our high school department chairs, administrators, and our learning and teaching team, setting up for his first visit to the district, which will be October 18th. And he'll be spending the entire day at York, doing classroom observations and giving feedback to the leaders at York. August 14th, our second Institute Day, are really building-based days. They're aligned to the district vision and our learning and teaching priorities, but if every building that you walk into looks just a little bit different based on what they need. At EC5, they spent time really launching PLCs. They participated in training over the summer. At 612, they were fine-tuning their PLCs. There was discussion of this year's school improvement plans. Most of our schools had worked with their leadership teams over the summer, and they've been working on crafting those plans, which we will share with you next month. And then, as always, there's a lot of nuts and bolts for the start of the year to cover. So just to bring you back to our learning and teaching priorities, the goal really over the start of the year activities was to help create that shared understanding so that everyone who works in the district knows where we are going, why we're going there, and how we're going to get there. And what it has led to is a wonderful start to the school year, which we are going to highlight for you with the first day of school video. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for this update and the video. My question, it all sounds fabulous.
That's always my goal, Margaret.
And, there's an and. How do we know? How will we know if it was as fabulous, or if it was successful, if we got our outcomes? How will we measure that?
Oh boy, that's a very big question with lots of different measures. So I will tell you some of the work we're doing with leaders. So as you look at that first priority, it's essential that our leaders understand how to tell the story of where we're going and how we're going to get there, or they can't help their teachers understand it, who can't help translate that into action for our kids. At our coaches meeting on Friday, and we'll do it with our leaders at our EC12 meeting next week, they worked with a partner and had to tell that story in their own words. And then some got up and shared it in their own words. So I'm seeing it translated to our leaders, which now will check in. The same indicators that we use for success, our students reading on grade level by the end of third grade, all of our KPIs, that really is going to tell us if we're doing this. We have some measures already in place for the 6 Cs. As you can imagine, those don't get measured the same way. You know, you can't put a number to it. So we have some standards, particularly at K-5, that we feel tie to some of the 6 Cs. And as we're doing our curriculum work in the second priority, that's part of that curriculum development, is to put in place explicit instruction in the competency of the 6 Cs and ways to determine if we've met that.
And I apologize, because my question, it was way too vague.
Okay.
So let me try to narrow it in. As an example, you mentioned some of the, what did you call it, for the new teachers, the
Teacher Academy?
The new educator, the induction
new
activities?
educator.
Yes.
And you mentioned there were some changes that you made.
Yes.
Were there any measures that say these changes were effective and that the new educators are on par or are ready to go or absorbing the information?
I see what you're saying. So, okay, that's a great question. Some of the things that we've spread out, timed to the year where it's most relevant for our teachers, is based on feedback we've gotten from new educators in previous years that the week was too overwhelming. So, for example, learning targets will be a portion of the first month of that monthly meeting. How will we know if that learning sticks? That is tied to the teacher evaluation tool. So as principals and assistant principals are doing teacher observations and giving feedback to new teachers, even doing walkthroughs, informal walkthroughs on learning targets is something very easily measurable and able to be determined. So there are those types of measures in place. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Karen?
I just wanted to thank you for adding the GINA and the exchange of the leadership, because that gave me a sense of implementation.
Yes.
You know, it's one
It's
thing
hard
to
to
know
visualize.
how to visualize what's really going on, like you can in the classroom. And as I look at this, I think, okay, 2 years ago it was ELA, right? So it's a
Right.
big start of the year activities for teachers, let alone the students.
Right.
And then last year was, oh my goodness, it just
Eureka Math?
Thank you, Eureka Math. And so this year, there's not something content-wise like that, but it is around just how to approach it.
Well, and standards-based reporting. That's a big nut for our elementary teachers. Yeah, that is a big shift for them.
Shannon?
A comment, yeah. I was at one of the elementary schools for curriculum night, and it was explained very well, so I just wanted to forward that on.
Oh,
That
good.
It was explained to parents what 1, 2, 3, 4 means, and I thought it was very good.
Oh, good, thank you. We know that at this time of year, parents take it in at one level, but we know as report card time comes up in November, and you start to see it on paper, we know that more questions will come. But the response we heard from our principals kind of mirrors what you said, Shannon, so thank you.
Chris?
So just a general question about really high level. So I mean, I think it's great that you bring in experts from outside to come in and talk, but just the general process of figuring out who you're inviting, the theme, the topics, those big picture kind of things. How do you find these folks?
Well, Eric Scheninger and, thank you. Bill Daggett, who we had last year, are all part of the International Center for Leadership and Education. So we've done a lot of work with them. They really developed the rigor and relevance framework. So it really is about work that we've been doing and experts in those areas, not looking to bring in something sort of a one and done just to get the troops fired up. That's not what we're looking for. We're really looking for those people who are experts and who are aligned with the work that we are doing in the district. So we find that both of those we've seen in action at model schools when we've gone the last 3 years. So we know the quality of the presentation, we know the content. When you're working with them, we had multiple conversations with Eric over the phone and Dave did in person over what message we really want to get out to our staff.
So it seems like it all starts with a decision made early on, a multi-year path that's anchored around rigor and relevance framework, the 5 C's, and I mean the different pieces that we continue to talk about. So that's the foundation of all this, and these are all folks that are adherents of that approach?
Yes, that is correct.
So there's consistency across years?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, what you wouldn't want to do is say, okay, this year we're going to do rigor and relevance, and this year we're going to move on to something else, and the next year move on to something else. Because with that, you never have any coherence across the system, and you really will never have implementation at any deep sort of level. You're welcome.
Hey, anybody else? Okay, thank you. Next is senior final exam exemption.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Doherty, Assistant Principal for Curriculum at York. Thanks for having me in. I think you should have a memo that Mark Cohen produced based on some research that I did looking at other schools and what they do for seniors in their 8th semester. I'll just give a little bit of background on how it came up and the process I went through arriving at the policy language that I did. Honestly, it started innocently. My nephew is at LT, he's a senior. He just actually now is at Western Michigan, and he was talking through with me what finals I thought he should exempt. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so we went through the pros and cons of, should he exempt his Calc AB final, or, what's the percentage of it and all that kind of stuff. And as we were talking, that weekend, I was thinking, I wonder what their policy is. So I called LT, and they actually have a policy that allows students to exempt one of their finals each semester, and not just for seniors. So I was thinking that through, and then I got an email from Hinsdale Central, and they were doing a survey of high schools in the area and what they do for their 8th semester seniors on final exams. And so it seemed fortuitous that all of it was kind of coming together. I asked them for their feedback, and so I was able to see the feedback from 22 schools. Of the 22 schools that responded, only 6 didn't have a policy. York was one of them. My former district was also one of them. And so I started looking through what their policies were. Some of them were grades only. Some of them were a combination of grades and behavior. Some were behavior only. And some don't have second semester seniors take finals at all. 3 of the 22 are in that boat. before I move forward, I asked Dr. Moyer if he would be in agreement with the policy like that, and he said that he was, but I needed to do a little bit more background. So I reached out to the teachers of seniors at York, and I gave a survey, and I asked them for a range of different things. Should it be grades only? Should it be a combination? And I went through different criteria and asked them for their feedback on each. After I got that feedback, I asked the leadership team in a specific survey what their feedback was, and then I asked teachers at large, so they may be freshmen or sophomore or junior teachers, just to make sure I kind of covered my bases there. I then took all of that data and kind of narrowed it down to see what was something that they were in favor of and what they wouldn't be in favor of. And that's how I came up with the 4 criteria that I have. So in it, you'll see that it's no significant behavior consequences with our deans, no parking violations. Those 2 simply just making sure the kids aren't making poor decisions in their second semester. And also, we are a landlocked school and parking is tight. I know you all know that. The others, it was, it came this. I think it's a sort of a philosophical thing. I'm not in favor of a grade policy because I know there are lots of kids who work very hard in school and their C is a harder worked C than maybe an A someone else earned. And so we do have the criteria of not more than 4 missing assignments in a course, and then also the 3 unexcused absences. I will not lie, I was not an angel my senior year. I will not tell you that I did not skip 8th period French AP and go to the White Hen before practice. So I don't think that that having a no unexcused absence on a policy like this is reaching the type of student that we're hoping to stem their behavior. I think that any group of seniors, when they start getting their acceptance letters and some students start to make poor decisions, there does become a tipping point in that senior class where students who may not have made a choice suddenly do start to make that choice. And so we hope that a policy like this would help to stem some of that behaviors to help them make better choices. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Karen?
It's a broad question, but because you said that, there's all these districts that are already doing this. I would like to see what they are. And
Sure.
I mean, I've got a lot of thoughts about it, whether you do it grades, whether you do it not. It looks like we're looking for a certain type of student for this. So I would like, to know what other districts are doing that are our comparable districts, and when they've implemented this, and, what pros and cons and different things that they've encountered.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know that I had sent to Dr. Cohen, so I don't know if you have gotten this. It sounds like you may have gotten some of my feedback based on what you've said already. But was there a tipping point as to why you would say the last 2 bullets of the 4 and the 3, absences, unexcused absences and missing homeworks?
Yeah, I would say that students that are, turning in their homework on a regular basis and all their assessments, they're getting strong grades anyway. Mm-hmm. But I would say that there does become a point where with students, once they start missing assignments, they're only going to let things slide for so long. We have kids going to some great schools that suddenly after they're accepted, it's like, whoa, maybe I don't need to turn that in. And then suddenly a student that's never had a C, suddenly, well, it's a C second semester, that's okay. And it's not necessarily about the grade, but it's about keeping them engaged in the work of school and making sure that they understand that their senior year doesn't end at spring break, that it really does end once they've crossed that stage and shaken your hand. So that in particular, and I think then also unexcused absences. We went back and forth. Should it be 2? Should it be 3? Should it not be any? And I do think that the number of students that would benefit from staying on track with a no unexcused absence. Obviously, I want kids in school all the time. I don't think it's hitting the type of student that we're hoping to stem their behaviors. The students that are turning in their stuff and going to class every day, they have 0 unexcused absences, except for maybe senior ditch day, which is unsanctioned.
Karen, if I can just give you my parent perspective, my kids all went to District 211, so in the northwest suburbs, and they had a no senior final policy. And it was all absences in second semester if you missed more than 5 days for any reason. It was not grade-based. Kids always had the option of taking a final if they felt like that was going to help their grade. But as having 3 children go through that system, the absences, I would say more than anything, because it just made them really think about some of the choices they were making for different events and activities. And I had only one who had to take a final. So it was a policy that worked, and it didn't feel punitive at all. And I would say for my oldest 2 did keep them engaged in the game.
And if I may also chime in, my previous district, the Lincoln Way High School District, enacted a very similar policy probably about 6 years ago. And it was tied to attendance. The idea being that, if you were present towards the end of the year and you were keeping your nose clean, that was an incentive to continue, for continued, keeping their eye on the prize, so to speak. At that point, when you get to the second semester senior year, most students have already gotten into the college of their choice, and maintaining the status quo is about good enough for them for some students, in terms of academics, but it's really the behavior pieces that we have to start being concerned about. You just pull up an article from 2017 where Hinsdale School District 86 was considering the same thing. And, final exams are becoming less and less in vogue even at the undergrad level. In fact, according to this Tribune article, only 23% of undergrad courses at Harvard had a final exam as of last year. The idea of equating a final exam worth a large percentage of a student's grade to rigor is that's not what rigor is. That's not how we define rigor as a district. We define rigor by the depth of experience, not cramming for a final exam administered in 90 minutes at the end of the year. And there's a tremendous amount of research that shows that the benefit of that is very quickly lost. That students coming back the following year, when given the same final exam that they may have done well in just 6 months prior, fail those exams because of the nature of the way they're set up. So, having more project-based assessments, things that are more authentic to what's going on in the classroom is the direction we'd like to go. And this is certainly a step in that direction.
I like what I'm hearing at the end. I mean, because I know that there are schools that maybe not have an exam, but they've got major projects or thesis or, those sorts of things, even undergrad these days. So, okay, that helps me put it into perspective some. So I understand this type of student or the student makeup that you're trying to attract with better behavior, incent. But I guess when I listen to you, I say, well, 3 unexcused absences? I don't know if my kids had any unexcused. It was just not what you do. I mean, it's behavior. It's part of your character. It's part of, that sort of thing. So that's why I'm really kind of struggling with some of this.
It came down to things like leaving early for spring break. Those days would count against you. So those are things that really start to figure into their decision making, where maybe if there wasn't that incentive, taking off some extra days for spring break, second semester, senior year wouldn't seem to some kids like a bad idea.
John?
Here's what I'm struggling with, and you guys have added a lot. I think you've made the case that final exams isn't a very good thing to do from education standpoint. What kind of information do you get out of final exams from an 8th semester or a graduating senior? What do you do with that information? Nothing.
Well, the staff does, but you don't have the opportunity to give that feedback to the students because obviously they're leaving, but we do use it to look at our courses, that how did they do by the end? Is there something that we need to do to review?
Okay.
You know, some of us use, there are AP courses, seniors that don't, they use the AP data in order to give that information, so those senior classes don't have finals already. So we do have courses that are project-based. We do have, our world language courses, they don't have final exams. They're 100% of their grade is based on the semester work that they do. So it's, it's maybe not, it seems as if it's a bigger step than maybe it really is for us at this point.
So it seems like it benefits the school. Really doesn't do anything for the kid, but we want to leverage it into behavior. So I have no problem with this.
All right, thank you.
Margaret?
I wanted to say thank you for the background story.
Sure.
And I really appreciate the fact that there was significant amount of outside benchmarks that went on, as well as internal benchmarks where you surveyed first the senior teachers and then all of the teachers to see what impact they believe this would have on their classes and any of those other things. So I appreciate the research. It's interesting. I do know quite a few schools that haven't had senior exams for quite a while. And as far back as you can remember, I didn't have to take senior exams in my high school. That was many, many, many years ago. So I don't think this is a new concept. My question, I imagine the students that this impacts will appreciate this. Do you see any reason why this would not work? Was there any thought, was there any feedback on what people would be concerned about or what might be missed?
Sure. Of the staff, there were 8 really strong voices that were absolutely. I don't agree with this. That we want to make sure that we're preparing kids for college, that they take finals there. That some felt of those 8, like if exams aren't about behavior, it's about showing that you've mastered the content, and so. I did listen to those 8 voices, and I would say, like Dr. Cohen had mentioned, that when we were all in college, I did have a Blue Book final, but schools aren't really doing that anymore. And it is becoming more project-based, and there are a lot of courses in a lot of universities that are stepping away from what we're used to in college. So it's a little bit of a re-education about what do we expect, or what do our students being asked to do for finals or end of course summatives in school. But I don't see a drawback other than, I then put the systems in place to make sure that it goes smoothly. That's, but I think it's worth the work, just like the work for changing the placement process. That, yeah, it takes a long time to do it, but once you get that process in place, I think it's a good step forward.
Chris?
So, echoing Margaret, thank you for taking the time to investigate and take the initiative to do this. I do think that I very much support the concept of exemptions, particularly for second semester seniors. The question, before I start, how many of the other districts have an academic component?
So of the 22, I believe 10 of them, I think 8 were grades only. And then I believe that there were 3 or 4 more that had grades and attendance tied. And then the rest were some sort of behavior component. Some schools tied it to their PBIS. And then there were the 3 schools that they don't have it. I believe it's Plainfield, Hinsdale Central, Hinsdale 86, and I don't remember the third district.
Okay. And then we had a little bit of talk just now about just the value of finals, and that's a macro issue that's totally disconnected from this discussion around policy for second semester seniors, I think.
Yeah.
The teachers still retain full discretion over whether or not to give a final and whether to make it project-based
Yep.
or not, and that evolution will or won't happen, but that's more of an academic question.
Yeah, we're constantly, that's one of the things I feel like 20% for a final exam is too much. That 17 weeks of work shouldn't be determined on 90 minutes in a classroom. I encourage staff to really rethink the percentage it cannot be more than 20%. We have a lot of classes that have moved to 10% this year. And then again, like the World Language Department, they moved away from finals altogether.
Sure, but I guess the point is that's, as it pertains to this policy alone, all we really are discussing is an incentive for something.
Yes.
And right now, it's basically a participation trophy. I mean, show up, don't cheat, don't fight, don't swear at the teacher. Do stuff you're supposed to do that we expect our kids to do. And I guess I'm just having a hard time without some type of reward for achievement. And I'm not a 90% and above exempt kind of, I just believe there's some minimal level like a C that you should be working towards, because showing up all semester is not what education is about. I mean, it's about some level of competency, and so pick it. I mean, it doesn't have to be mastery potentially. I mean, kids can work hard and they can put effort in, and I think the kids that do that deserve this reward. But I'm just having a hard time with having, so I'm the parent of a lot of kind of really hard-working average kids, and trying to get them to concentrate I've had two of them go through, and one of them is in the middle of this now, and if I were to tell you I'm really against it, I don't think I would be able to get home tonight because my senior would lock the door. But I just conceptually have an issue without some level of achievement requirement. It's not just about showing up. And yes, colleges are changing the way they educate, but it's still not just about showing up in college either. And I don't think that it's too much to ask to put some minimum level of achievement in there to keep them motivated all year long to study at night, to show up, and yeah, they can miss a couple of homework assignments underneath this, but you got to study, you got to get grades. I mean, I think straight D's is not a great way to go out, and so I mean, that's where I'm coming from. I would just love to see some kind of threshold, a very achievable threshold that can keep kids focused on not just showing up but actually achieving.
Awesome. And if I could push back on that a touch, I would say that having hardworking kids who, now you said average, I would question that, but they grow through feedback. And to go back to John McDonough's question, that I think your senior daughter's name Claire?
Oh no.
Okay, so what will Claire get from taking that second? What growth will she get other than getting her report card, which her final's not, or her transcript, which her final's not even posted on? It's just her semester grade. So what does she get other than I've looked in PowerSchool while it's up?
What she does on that final is irrelevant. That's my point.
Yeah.
My point is that in mid-March or April, or May 1st or before that when she makes her decision, how do I get her to show up and actually study for a test? Because if she knows she has to get a C to avoid the embarrassment of having to show up for that final, she's going to run through the tape. And I think it is important for her to finish with at least a C in every class going into college, because some colleges ask for your second semester grades.
Yeah.
And I just think as a parent, it makes my job a heck of a lot easier if there's some minimum level of threshold that I can expect my kid to achieve, so that they look at me and go, Dad, lighten up. I don't have to take my final. And I'm like, well, if you don't get at least a C, you will. You better get back to your room and study. I think that it's not unfair to ask for some level of achievement hurdle to go with my personal opinion. I mean, and the rest of the board can weigh in, but I just have an issue
I
with
feel
that.
like that you're getting a lot of nods there, and I do think that though they do have that incentive already, that colleges look at your transcript, and if there is a big dip, there is a reward for pulling it in. If you're for students that get athletic scholarships, that you have to maintain a certain GPA through your 8th semester, they ask for that, and so there's already something there. And so to add an incentive in a policy where there's already an incentive, it feels like sort of double dinging.
Well, I mean,
so to
we're not
speak.
kicking kids out of school or suspending them here.
Yeah, I know, I'm
We're
just-
offering them an opportunity not to spend an extra couple days studying. And again, I mean, we can debate the merits of a final or not. I get it. But what we're talking about here is an incentive for behavior and hopefully achievement through there. And I just think that finals aren't that big of an ask of a kid if they work hard all year. They should not have to worry about it. I think asking them to get a C in that class. And I don't know. I mean, I can't make blanket statements because there are really hardworking kids that get D's too. But I just think it sends the wrong message that all you got to do is show up and behave the way you're expected to behave for 3 or 4 months. That's just my 2 cents.
Absolutely.
I'd like to add one thing to the conversation, and then I guess we can decide where we want to go. But if the board directs us to have some type of an academic component, I do have some ideas that I think are reasonable that we could take a look at and bring back if that's what the board wants. But when you make these policies, I remember back when I played in high school, which, like Margaret, that too was very, very long time ago, and they had a rule that you had to pass all your classes, and I was 7th in my class, but I took calc and got a D my senior year and was on the verge of failing that class, and I was one of the better students in the school and was very close to not being eligible to play. And I look at my daughter, who, if she knew that these meetings were videotaped, I too would now be on the chopping block. But, she does not care for math. And I encouraged her to take the most challenging math course that was appropriate for her this year. And I said, better you struggle this year in high school than next year in college. And she will get decent grades, but generally speaking is an average or slightly above average student, and is in some classes struggles. And I think that if we want kids challenging themselves, we might want to be careful that we don't create something where students don't take as challenging a courses as they could their senior year to and duck some courses maybe that they probably should be taking. But that's just part of a conversation. I'm not saying that I'm, trying to drive anything one way or the other. I think if the board wants to see an academic component, then we come back to you with an academic component to this. That's why we're trying to feel you out as to what your comfort level is.
Dave, my point to that was just, let's try to make sure that we think of that kid. Right? And maybe it's some kind of a weighted thing if you're taking an AP class or something. I don't know, but I just think that even a kid that struggles, that's an average to above average kid, I would think should be able to get a C in a course. And I may be wrong, but maybe there's other ways to do that. But I do want to be sensitive to the kid that's working hard, but I just want to make sure that it's motivated. It feels like what we're rewarding is showing up and not participating. And I just think that school is about participation, about achievement, not around just showing up.
Let me ask, and I hear this question. There's a section in here that talks specifically about no more than 4 missing graded assignments in the course. How did that get included, and what was the intent on including that?
Because I do think that we want kids engaged in class. We want them going all the way to the finish line, much like Mr. Bloom said. I do think that when you tie it to graded assignments rather than like homework checks, that, I was a student that didn't do the homework check stuff, and I did my A's and B's just fine. That's why I tied it to graded assignments, to make sure that kids are doing the things that are being assessed so that they can get their feedback on those to make sure that they're working throughout the semester, rather than it being tied specifically to a grade. So I think it was the same intent, just a different take on it.
Jim?
Thanks. Just operationally, kids that are in ACP courses, I'm assuming whether they have to take the final or not is up to Indiana University. It's not up
Correct.
to
Yes.
us. So they'd be taking the final if Indiana says they got to take the final.
Yes.
Along with any other dual credit option that, that's up to the...
That is up to the university. So there are students that do take the courses that don't sign up with Indiana. While it's a very small handful of kids, I may, for example, for Comp 101, I have 24 kids. I may have 4 kids that are only taking it for York credit, not for Indiana credit.
Oh, so those kids could
yeah.
be optional. Got it.
But they also have an absence component to those courses. So we do have a lot of seniors that already are used to not being able to have more than 5 absences before it affects their grade with Indiana.
Got it. I'd be curious, maybe you've already done this study, is the percentage of the time a final exam raises or lowers a kid's grade? And is it skewed in either one of those directions?
I don't know the exact answer. I hear probably more from people whose grades were negatively affected from finals rather than positive. So I would say that there will be some seniors that will opt to take it because they're at a C+, B- and they're wanting to really push to get that bump. But I do think that, if I have an 89% and I'm shooting for a 90, in order to get that percentage up, I have to get a 96 or a 97 on the final in order to make that break. Right. And so, knowing that though, I haven't, done the numbers on it. I suppose I could choose a few classes and do the numbers on it.
That's something I'd just be curious about. Because see if my guess is correct. But anyway, all right. My next point. I just want to be on record saying this is a fantastic idea.
Thank you, sir.
You have my full support. I don't think we need an academic component. I'll let the rest of the board discuss that. But these kids have worked hard for 8 semesters. They're accepted to college. I mean, that is the finish line. And I agree with all of your other stipulations to keep them engaged through the end of the year. But to put them through another round of final exams, I just don't think is going to have that much of a positive impact on their life. In fact, maybe just the opposite. I mean, because all these kids are already taking AP exams the week before. And frankly, you have my full support in taking a look at the idea, that concept of 1 exam exemption per semester. I think that's a fantastic idea. It allows that kid that's got an 89 and needs a 96 on the final in one class versus another class where, got an A, to not take that final in the class where he's got an A and allows that student to put in the extra time to get that 96 in the final in that other class. I think that's a fantastic idea.
I will look into it.
If I may, just to chime in to Chris's point, with the fact that the final exam exemption would call for good behavior, being in school, and also not missing assignments, I would say if you're a student that exhibits good behavior and is coming to school and doesn't miss assignments, generally they're academically successful, and that we wouldn't see a lot of students that are hovering at a D GPA who are turning in all of their work, who are behaviorally sound, who are at school consistently. I would say that those sort of run together, and that if we have students that don't qualify for the exemption based on any of these criteria, those would be the students that that may be more struggling. I think you would see a tie to academics and some of these other indicators.
But I guess if what you're saying is if they're doing these other things and they don't really have to worry about the academic threshold, so if you put it in there, it would be irrelevant.
That's essentially what I'm saying.
To that student. And so I'd prefer to see it in that case.
I want to ask just you, and if you said this, I'm sorry, but you got the 4 graded assignments. So is there, why 4? Because I feel like that's a way to work with the academic component. You know, is there something magical about 4 that the grade starts to go down to like a D, or did you just choose 4?
I wish I could give a better answer than I thought, like, gosh, I don't know, like, gotta be more than 2, but like 5. Yeah, I mean, literally, that was my thinking. There wasn't a lot of research. I researched a lot of things, but I did not do the analysis on the make or break on the assignment. I didn't.
I feel like, you know, you have kids who are terrible test takers, right? You know, you have kids who actually their grade does go down when they take the final because they, you know, can study and they just aren't a good test taker. So it feels like there's something to look at in that graded assignment piece. That is there an amount of assignments that keeps them academically performing okay. That still, so it kind of achieves both, but it's really about the graded assignments, because the learning, you know, tests are one thing, but really a graded assignment is really where the learning happens, in my opinion. So I would like to know if, you know, you could maybe look into that a little more.
Yeah, hey, you know what? Sure. Yes.
So would you like us to come back in October, at the first meeting in October, with a follow-up recommendation based on some of the comments that we heard tonight?
John?
Before we get into that, I just had one more question I asked. If this has no academic value, why do we even use it as behavior incentive? That's just restating what I said. And nominal benefit to school. The one thing we didn't touch on is the disruption of senior exam schedule being different than the rest of the exam schedule. And I'm wondering if this is a way to minimize that disruption on the other 75% of the high school by eliminating something that has no benefit for the 25% that's going out the door.
That's a really good question. I actually eliminated the alternate final exam schedule last year, so we don't do that anymore. So that was maybe when your children were at York, but no, we went on a regular schedule this past year. So because it was creating too much disruption for only a small portion of kids.
Chris?
And to your point, I mean, you guys jump in and correct me wrong. I think the board fully supports putting this in place before spring of 19 for these seniors. I think the question is just the criteria, and I think we're 99% there with most of it. The question is there a way to artfully put an academic component in or not? And I would like to continue that conversation, but I wouldn't want to hold up implementation.
So here's my second suggestion, which I think might be better. We have a Learning and Teaching Committee meeting coming up. We bring this to the Learning and Teaching Committee meeting with what we would consider a revised recommendation based on the board discussion, and then assuming that it can go through that committee, we could bring the revised proposal to the board for approval.
Does that work? Totally supportive, just, you know.
Oh my gosh, no, hey, that's what I'm here for. No, thank you for the feedback. I really appreciate it. And, no. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Superintendent's Communication Innovation Cohort.
Okay, thank you. In your packet, you see, and I've communicated with this about this to you in other ways as well. But I think it is a pretty neat opportunity for us, and so I wanted to have this forward at a public meeting. We are one of 40 schools that have been selected for a National Innovation and Transformational Leadership Network from across the country, and this is a joint effort of the AASA and That is the National Superintendents Association and the International Center for Leadership in Education, and they are teaming up to facilitate this work across the country. You may recognize some of the names who are involved, Bill Daggett, Ray McNulty. And so it will be a year-long process. There'll be a variety of different activities over the course of that year, but the idea being that you would network with other people who share this value from across the country of wanting to be that value innovation, but actually try to operationalize what that means so that you can come up with some type of an action plan and a framework for your district for how you're going to continue to move down that path. I think because a lot of people talk about those kinds of things, but they can remain nebulous concepts, and so if you really want to do something about it, you need to make it meaningful for the teachers and the people that are doing the work. So I thought that this was a great opportunity, and we have a team from our district that'll be involved in these activities over the course of the next year, so you'll hear continued updates, and ultimately next fall, some type of a action plan.
Any questions on that? All right, then we are towards the end of the meeting here, and we wanted to acknowledge that today is September 11th, and so we would like to just have a moment of silence, and then we'll have our tweet of the week after that. Okay. Thank you.
So I think you'll see that there is a theme here. So this was our tweet of the week. Bev's not here, so I'm going to jump in on her behalf. You can see that this was at Churchville. I'm sorry, I don't know why I thought Sandburg. This was at Churchville, and they met at the flagpole and honored the memory of that unfortunate date in history, September 11th. So, perhaps next week we'll have a cheerier tweet of the week, but we certainly thought that was appropriate for today. One other thing, it seems like the last couple of board meetings now I've been getting emails at 4 o'clock that are somehow or another pertinent to the meeting. But in this case, the IASB sent an email indicating that at the upcoming fall division meeting that Margaret Harrell will be recognized as a master board member for her involvement in all the various different types of trainings and board activities that the IASB offers to help board members throughout the course of their tenure. So congrats, Margaret.
Okay, any board communications? Jim?
I think Marianne Lemke deserves a shout out for spending her birthday with us this evening. Happy birthday, Marianne.
All right, so we have our upcoming meetings. Monday, well, Monday is not a meeting, but Monday, September 17th is our State of the Schools address, 7 o'clock at York High School. We hope the community will join us. Monday, September 24th is the Community Finance Night, and that will be held at Lincoln School. There will be building tours held at 6 o'clock, and the finance presentation will be at 7. On Tuesday, September 25th, there's the regular scheduled Board of Education meeting at 7:30 here in District 205 Center. And Monday, October 1st, we have a Finance Committee meeting here in District 205 Center at 6:30. And finally, Tuesday, October 9th is a regular scheduled Board of Education meeting at 7:30 here in District 205 Center. So if there's nothing else, then it's 8:45. We are adjourned.